While 2020 could be described as interesting to say the least, it was definitely an amazing year for games. And while this year is coming to an end, it is also the beginning of a new console generation. This year was full of highly anticipated titles, as well as a few surprise hits, so there's a ton of games that could have made anyone's best of list. Unfortunately, I could only pick 10 for this video, so join me while I count on what I consider to be the top 10 video games of 2020. Number 10, Resident Evil 3. I love this franchise, and I definitely had a lot of good memories playing the original game in the 90s. After playing the Resident Evil 2 remake last year, which completely blew me away, I was really looking forward to reliving Jill's escape from Raccoon City. This remake had everything we could ever want for an updated version of the story, and while it was faithful to the original, something about it didn't win me over the same way Resident Evil 2 did. And don't get me wrong, the game looked amazing, it felt great playing, I really liked the new Jill and Nemesis redesigns, but for whatever reason, it didn't feel as magical as when I played Resident Evil 2. Maybe the awe of seeing a classic Resident Evil game remade with current gen graphics kinda wore off on me. Who knows? All I know is that I didn't play this game nearly as much as I did Resident Evil 2. If there's one game that helped a lot of people this year, it was Animal Crossing New Horizons, which I put at number 9. When COVID started to really hit back in March, Animal Crossing gave a lot of people a way to hang out with friends while in lockdown. Because of this, New Horizons ended up becoming a lot of people's first Animal Crossing game, me included. Now with that said, I had no prior knowledge of how these games worked. I didn't know the game was played in real time, I didn't know you could just catch a whale shark the same way you would catch a goldfish, and I didn't know that your villagers could hate you for ignoring them. Sorry, Dom. But you know what? I fell in love with the game. This game had no storyline, there were no enemies to kill or a princess to save, you just had to make friends and create your own town for your friends to live in. And as boring as that may sound, I had a lot of fun creating this little village so a whole bunch of bipedal animals could run around and catch butterflies. So much fun, in fact, I ended up clocking over 300 hours within the first month of playing New Horizons. Unfortunately, or should I say fortunately, another game came along soon after, and I haven't touched Animal Crossing since, and that game would be the next one on the list. Number 8, Trials of Mana. Initially, I wasn't even going to play this game because after playing the Secret of Mana remake, which was a huge disappointment, I decided not to even bother with this one. But after hearing so many really good reviews, I decided to give it a shot, and I'm super glad I did. The game was vibrant and beautiful, the characters were quirky and charming, the battle system was fun, and the leveling system was really interesting to mess around with. Coming into this, I had zero knowledge of the original Trials of Mana game, so it was my first time experiencing this story. I'm a big fan of interlacing narratives, and I really enjoyed seeing all 6 characters' journeys interweaved amongst each other. I thought it was pretty cool. So cool in fact, I ended up playing through Trials of Mana multiple times so I could experience all 3 final bosses and see everyone's ending. Next is what most people would assume was going to be my number 1 game, but it ended up becoming number 7, and that is The Last of Us Part 2. While I might not fully agree with the Game Awards giving this best game of the year, I could totally see why this game won. The game is visually stunning, the environments are detailed and lifelike, the combat is improved from the original game, the mechanics feel similar yet refined, the motion capture and voice acting is near flawless, the music hits every emotion that it intends to hit whenever it plays. There's a lot to list. So when you look at every aspect to what this kind of narrative-driven game has to offer, The Last of Us Part 2 is objectively the best game of the year. But then of course you have the subjective elements such as the writing, the characters and the direction of the story, etc, etc. I think it's safe to say a majority of the people, especially those who have played the first Last of Us game, do not like The Last of Us Part 2. Dare I say, they loathe The Last of Us Part 2, and I could see why. Fortunately for me, I'm not one of those people. I thought the game's story was phenomenal, and I could actually appreciate the game for taking the risk of showing both sides of the story. I mean, what game gives you the opportunity to where we can play the villain, who we see is the hero in our own story? So, with that short and raving review, why didn't this make my number 1 game, let alone top 5? Well, after I finished the game, I never went back to it. The Last of Us Part 2 is definitely a masterpiece in my eyes, but for me, it was a one and done kind of thing. Number 6 on the list is Genshin Impact. This was another game I initially put on my ignore list, but it was impossible for me not to see any Genshin Impact when I was online. Being an anime fan, a gamer, and a cosplayer, and following people with similar interests, there was literally no way I could avoid seeing this game whenever I was browsing the interwebs. Genshin Impact was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, I couldn't escape it. So, after a month of its initial release, I finally gave it a shot, and I was hooked. And no, it wasn't the gameplay, although I thought it was pretty fun and relaxing, nor was it the story that won me over, but it was the characters. Oh yes, the characters. But before you start thinking perverted thoughts, It was actually the writing and dialogue that won me over, not so much the looks, believe it or not. Oh, and then I mentioned that this is technically a mobile game, yet the world is bigger than some AAA titles. I'm still impressed on how massive this game is whenever I play it, and there's still a bunch of updates coming to expand the world. As for how long I'll be playing Genshin Impact, well, who knows? If they keep releasing cool characters and new areas to explore, I'll definitely be there. Number 5 is Granblue Fantasy Versus. If you know me, you know I love my fighting games and my anime. Well, this game is both, packaged in what I believe is the best looking fighting game out there to date. I mean, look at it. It legit looks like an anime movie, and that's all gameplay. Look at these sharp, crisp, bold lines. Look at the vibrant colors, the flashy particle effects, and over-the-top special moves. It legit looks like an anime, and I am all about that clean Japanese cartoon aesthetic. But not only does this game look good, but it's really fun. So fun, in fact, that after a 5-month hiatus of not playing this game, I decided to randomly pick it up last week, and I caught myself playing this game for 6 hours non-stop with friends online. Yeah, it's that fun. And what's so great about Granblue Fantasy Versus is that it's also very beginner friendly to those new to fighting games, all while still having a lot to offer to fighting game veterans. And for those who know video game developer Arc System Works, ever since the original Guilty Gear, they've pushed the envelope on what could be achieved in fighting games. They pushed it so hard, in fact, that everyone is hiring them to make their anime looking property into a fighting game. And I'm all for it, because look at this guy. Ugh, so beautiful. Next up, we have Ghost of Tsushima, which takes the number 4 spot on the list. I think it's safe to say that this game is probably on everyone else's top 10 list, if not taking the number 1 spot. I know it's really cliche to say this game looks beautiful, but let me explain. It's a little different for Ghost of Tsushima. Unlike games like The Last of Us Part 2 that are super detailed and lifelike, or games like Granblue Fantasy Versus that look really clean, Ghost of Tsushima has a kind of serenity to it. There's a very specific kind of beauty Ghost has with its landscapes, how the game uses certain colors and wind effects, also the way the game uses light to really bring out an importance of a scene, or to invoke some kind of emotion. It's art. Ghost of Tsushima is basically an interactive art piece where you ride horses through pretty meadows and also murder a bunch of dudes under fallen sakura blossoms. Now pair that with some really awesome samurai battles and you're in for a really good time. Not only that, but there's a huge open world to explore and a story that'll get you really invested. So it's easy to see why so many would consider this their best game of 2020. Unfortunately, while I did enjoy playing this game, it left me wanting more. Or should I say, it didn't leave me wanting more. Because I didn't go back to play the game to maximize stats or explore areas that I left unexplored, I just left it. You would think with the game with so much to do, I'd want to hunt every achievement down, but I guess there wasn't enough there to hook me. Nonetheless, I thought Ghost of Tsushima was a pretty amazing game. And now for the only game on this list from the new generation of consoles, Demon's Souls, taking number 3. Everyone knows my love for Dark Souls, so when this game was announced, you bet your ass I was excited. But my excitement wasn't because I was able to relive my Demon's Souls experience in high definition, it was because I never played Demon's Souls. I never played the original game when it was released on the PS3 back in 2009. I'm actually very new to these Soulsborne type games, as my very first one was Bloodborne, which I played just 3 years ago. I followed it up with Dark Souls and went to Dark Souls 2 and 3, and yeah, I fell in love with this series and it instantly became one of my favorite game franchises ever. And since then, I've been always wanting to try out Demon's Souls, and I even purchased my own PS3 copy. I just never had a PS3 to play it on. Well, now that I have a PS5, I can finally have a chance to play the game, but this time in as much detail as possible. I mean, look at it. This game looks fantastic. And if you have ever played these kind of games for the first time, having zero knowledge and having nothing spoiled for you, you know the feeling. The feeling of seeing these larger than life bosses for the first time, figuring out how to kill them, finding out enemies' weaknesses and figuring out where to go. Playing these games blindly is definitely a one-of-a-kind experience. Encountering the Tower Knight, seeing the first iteration of patches, falling in love with the Maiden in Black and dying over and over again against the Dragon God until you find out how to kill it. I want to experience this game again for the first time, but alas, I cannot. So to Bluepoint for making an amazing remake, and for all you assholes who invaded my world just to kill me, thank you. My number 2 game is something that's probably not on anyone's top 10 list, and that's War of the Visions Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, which is a strategy RPG gacha game. Yeah, a mobile game spin-off of a spin-off is at my number 2 spot. But let me explain. You see, Final Fantasy Tactics is my favorite game of all time, and I've been waiting years for a sequel or a remake or some kind of spiritual successor to come out. And while there have been many strategy JRPGs out there, there hasn't been one with a similar story or a charm that won me over like Final Fantasy Tactics. That is, until War of the Visions came out. Not only does this feel similar to Final Fantasy Tactics, but the gameplay is actually pretty deep, if not deeper. There are multiple attack types, various elemental combinations, a ton of weaknesses, and countless job mixtures to make just about every character very unique. There are so many layers to War of the Visions, and I'm a huge sucker when it comes to games with deep character building mechanics and strategies. I mean, I keep looking at all the characters, and the degree to party compositions in this game are so vast, I'm surprised it's a gacha. Not only that, the story is also very well written, and the character designs are pretty cool. With War of the Visions also getting weekly updates with events, units, and equipment, there's always something new to expect. I honestly could see me playing this for quite some time. Plus, I've already invested over $1,000 on this, so I'm not going to quit anytime soon. Anyways, let's move on to number 1. And now for my number 1 game of 2020, Hades. This game totally caught me by surprise. I have actually never heard of developer Supergiant, nor have I played a roguelike type game ever. I first saw Hades when I was watching a streamer I follow play it, and at first glance, it kinda reminded me of Diablo. So I decided to jump into chat and ask him how the game was, and he simply said, "This game is probably my game of the year." Huh, I thought. Many weeks later, after seeing it nominated for Game of the Year, I decided to purchase the game myself and try it out, and boy was I surprised in just about everything this game had to offer. Amazing art direction, difficult yet addictive gameplay, a wonderful, charming cast of characters with awesome designs, and most importantly, a story that kept building the more you played. And when I discovered that you had to beat the game multiple times to get the true ending, I won't lie, I kind of felt like I was probably going to stop on my second or third playthrough, but as I'm recording this, I'm already at my 22nd run and it feels different every time. As I said before, I am a huge sucker when it comes to character builds, and in Hades, there's a large assortment of abilities, passives, weapons, and equipment that make every escape attempt really fun and exciting. Just when you think one ability is useless, you invent new combinations and realize just about everything can be useful when paired with the right stuff. The feeling of discovery with repetition is something I really love experiencing in Hades. Also, the game's narrative even goes to great lengths to explain why you're repeating these playthroughs so many times, and it totally makes sense on how the rules of this underworld is set up. I would also like to add that this top 10 games of 2020 video was supposed to be released a week or so earlier, but the reason this was held up for so long was because I was busy playing Hades. So yeah, Hades is an amazing game. From its presentation and direction to the gameplay and awesome script, I'm happy to put Hades in the number 1 spot as my game of the year. So if you haven't played it yet, give it a try. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Well, that's it for my video for the best games of 2020. Let me know if any of your favorite games made my list, and feel free to let us know what your top 10 games are in the comment section below. And with that, let us look forward to all the awesome games coming in 2021. Take care, guys.